W legends Jerry Lynn and Mikey Whipwreck. Now, let's welcome your host, Mike Freeland.
Hey guys, welcome to another special edition of Front Row Material. I am not Mike Freeland, I am the Ritt. And as always, we are filling in for Jerry Lynn and Mikey Whipwreck. And tonight we have a special guest here. We got a two-time Hall of Famer in the UFC and Impact Wrestling. And we have Mr. Ken Shamrock. Ken, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Not bad. Kind of gonna be doing this on the fly. So, man,
yeah, you missed the Luthez Hall of Fame.
Oh, well, damn, three-time Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Man, you're just collecting Hall of Fame trophies left and right, and they're all well-deserved.
Still got one more to go.
Hopefully we get that in the next couple of years.
Right.
So, but man, how you been doing during this whole pandemic thing now that we're kind of on the other side of it?
Yeah, just like everybody else, just trying to, feel your way around things and keep yourself interested in something. I've watched a lot of TV series, but fortunately the last probably a month, 2 months, I've been traveling quite a bit because they've lifted a lot of the non-travel. So I've been able to travel quite a bit. So let's hope it stays that way.
And you were actually a little busy doing tapings, weren't you, for Impact during the pandemic off and on?
Yeah, I haven't done that for a while. Now I'm actually doing more of my business with meet and greets, but I also have a bare knuckle fight league called Valor BK, and that we're working a lot on that. We're going to be making a big announcement in the next week or two when our next fight is, where it is, so I'm kind of been working on that. I'm excited about the upcoming card.
Yeah, you sit there in career has come across a long way, expanded over 4 decades now.
don't tell anybody.
But hey, you still look amazing, for your age, and to stay in shape, it's a 24/7 job. You got to eat right, you got to hit the gym. So, how do you do it?
It's commitment. It's a lifestyle. I think a lot of people do it because they have to, in their job, like football or wrestling or, fighting. A lot of people do it because, it makes them better. For me, I started when I was 13 years old and I fell in love with lifting weights. I love the way it made me feel, and I still do. So to me, it's just a lifestyle.
A lot of people sit there and think that you actually made the transition from MMA to wrestling, but doing a little research, didn't you start your career off in wrestling?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know it because I went as Vince Torelli, Mr. Wrestling Vince Torelli. So a lot of people don't know that. And then, of course, in Japan, I went as Wayne Shamrock. So I went under 2 different names as I was doing my early career in pro wrestling. So whenever you pull up Ken Shamrock Wrestling, it doesn't pull up the Vince Torelli or the Wayne Shamrock.
So, what got you into wrestling at a young age?
I think, I played football. I wanted to go pro, but I broke my neck at 17. So that, even though I played college ball, I did well. I couldn't really get anybody to take a shot with the university on me or anything. So that kind of faded. I got a chance to play the Chargers. I got a tryout letter to go do a tryout. At that time, I had the opportunity to go to Nelson Royals Wrestling School. So instead of doing the football, I chose wrestling because I felt, in that direction. And even though I wanted to play in the NFL, as you start to grow, you start realizing what your gifts are. Even though I was a great football player and probably could have played, I just felt like me as an individual, betting on myself and not a team, I could go farther.
And as you can see, your career as by yourself, a solo guy, has turned out pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely do not regret my decision at all.
So, growing up, did you watch wrestling? Did somebody get you into wrestling? And who were some of your favorites?
Yeah, I remember early on, I never got to watch much TV. I was in and out of juvenile hall and in and out of placements on the run. So at a young age, I didn't watch much, but there was some matches, and they might have been reruns, but I remember watching Pat Patterson, Moondog Maine, and there was some bloodbaths.
Yeah.
And at a young kid, you don't know the gimmick. You just like, damn. So for me, the experience early on was pretty impressive because the way I grew up, fighting all the time, to me, that was cool. Like, I thought that was cool. You could do that to somebody, So as I grew up, I became more violent. Football, wrestling, I channeled it into something positive, and then that's how I was to get a long way because I was an angry kid, man. You could walk up to me, an adult or a kid, and if you came up to me and you said something to me that made me mad, I'd hit you. Like, just hit you. I didn't care if it was an adult.
So okay, you have all that anger, and so what? Who did somebody come up to you and kind of work it? Hey, you got something here. Let's channel it for the good, or did someone come up to you, or did you have to learn the hard way?
No, I mean, like, it was a transition because I was on the street and living out of a car, and I had gotten stabbed at 10 years old. Once I got stabbed, I ended up in the hospital, and they fingerprinted me. And because I was on the run, I had strong arm robbery, breaking and entering, a bunch of stuff. I mean, I robbed probably 10 stores. So I had a pretty big record at 10 years old. So obviously I got fingerprinted, I got popped, ended up in the system, which is the best thing that could have happened to me. And then from that point on, I just, went into the Bob Shamrock system. Mm-hmm. And that's where I really started to understand what it was like to be cared for, have structure, have rules, discipline, chores, and then know what my productivity was. Like, he literally goes, you got no fear, kid. And he put me in football, put me in wrestling, taught me how to play sports, the coaches. It was a struggle at first because I would get fouled quite a bit. And even in wrestling, I would cross-face guys, but I'd punch them. So you get in trouble for that. So it took me a while to understand the reward for playing within the rules, like getting your hand raised, like, and you're above that guy. So the reward for that was much better than the reward for not winning, like getting penalized, even in football, and hitting somebody late and you get penalized, cost your team to lose. So all those feelings and structure in sports helped me understand how to live in life, because if I understood the rules and the landscape of whatever I was doing in life, I could do whatever I wanted as long as I stayed within those rules. And so I correlated life in football, in wrestling, in sports, and that's how I lived it. Sports life.
Yeah, and as you can see, especially in your UFC career, your hand was raised a lot more than it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. Early on, you could pretty much guarantee my hand was getting raised all the time. Obviously, as years go on, you start losing that edge, and you don't want to think you're losing that edge.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, why do you keep fighting? And I tell them, I said, I broke my neck when I was 17. Mm-hmm. And I remember the determination after I was told I'd never play contact sports again. I remember the determination in my head was like, you can't tell me that. Like, that's not reality to me. And so against everybody who said you can't do that, because I broke my neck, I got bone took out of my hip, fused in my neck, and I had a halo on where my head didn't move for almost a year. I was in a chest plate with bars to my head. And when I moved, my hips had to move in order for my upper body to move. I mean, I didn't move. And so it took me a long time to get back to that. But it was this right here when people were telling me, you know, dude, you can't do that. Like, you can't go play football. You got bones in there, not cartilage. You got bones in there that are fused in your neck, and you can't turn your head. How are you going to, you can't tell me, man, because that's what I wanted to do. And so I went out and played football. I played college football. I went on to wrestle. I went on to be a fighter. Everything they said I couldn't do, I did. So then when I get to the end of my career, people wonder, well, why didn't you just stop? And it's like, do you understand? The only way I know when I am done is if I know it. I have to know it because I've always been able to overcome anything. And so for someone to tell me, dude, you got to, I'd have been unhappy if I'd have left when people told me to leave. I would have not been satisfied because I would have thought I left something there. I didn't completely leave it all out there. And so when people keep asking me that, and I know that they think I did, but that was because I had to know I had no more left.
Yeah, and you know, when you sit there and are told like you were over and over again, you can't do something, that heart you have is going to sit there and say, no, I'm going to, and I'm going to prove it to you. And then once you accomplish that, it's like, okay, I can do it. Now I'm going to keep doing it, and you know, and just continue because, you know, for a fighter, there's no quit.
And when you get to a point to where you can't anymore, especially with somebody like the determination I have, you flip a switch and you go, nothing's going to stop you. It's difficult for this typical character, personality to say when is when. It takes us probably a lot longer to know it's over than someone that's probably doesn't have the same determination.
Yeah. So going from your early wrestling career, how did the jump to, okay, UFC? And now we're not talking like everybody knows UFC now. We're talking early UFC. And that's when I'm like, man, this stuff's amazing. You know, Dan Severn, Hoist Gracie, Oleg Tektarov, you know, the early guys. Like, how did that come about to, okay, now we're going to start some MMA here?
Yeah. You know, my transition was it was a desire to challenge myself more. Because if you think about where I started from, I started out at Buzz Sawyer's Wrestling School in Sacramento. Buzz ended up passing away. So then I moved to Mooresville, North Carolina, from Sacramento, California to Mooresville, North Carolina. I go to train up there. And a few months in, you know, probably about 6 to 8 months in, I'm actually carrying the strap. I mean, I picked it up fast. I was doing well. I had an opportunity then at that point to go into Japan 1 year in and go to Baba's group. And so I wrestled there. And it was a challenge because their style was much different than what I was used to. It was register, but keep going. So it took me a while to figure that out. I remember practicing with the young boys, but it was challenging. So I knew that I wanted to do it. By the time I left there, I was getting really good. But then my time was up, right? So I got sent back. And so I started doing the program a little bit there. And then I saw this thing that they call hybrid wrestling. And it was UWF. And it was Maeda, Takada, and Fujiwara. And it was a group of these guys. And I remember the tape that I watched was Funaki and Suzuki. And I remember Dean Malenko put a tape in and showed me these two guys fighting. I'd never seen anything like this before. These guys were open hand striking. They were kneeing. They were kicking. They were taking each other down. They were choking. They were doing this weird leg stuff. And I was so intriguing because I was a fighter. I was a boxer. I was a wrestler. And I was a street fighter. I won a bunch of tough man. So I was a fighter. And so wrestling was cool, but it just felt like I needed more. When I saw this, I was like, I want to do that. And Dean goes, hey, dude, these guys this is real. They're hitting. They're going at it. The ending's predetermined, but they're beating the crap out of each other in between the bell. And I said, yeah. He goes, are you sure? And I go, yeah. So he sends me to Tampa, and I try out there, and I beat everybody up down there. And so then after, I would say, maybe 2 weeks, Sammy, who was the one that was the booker for Japan at the time, was in Tampa and watched me work out, said, hey, you want to go to Japan, and go up there and try out? I was like, yeah. So they sent me up there. And I remember the first thing I did, I go with those young kids and I started thumping them, just throwing them around. Because like I said, I had good wrestling ability. I was a tough kid on the street. I could punch. So I thumping these guys all over the place. And I'm feeling pretty good going, shoot, man, is this ball? Well, then walked Suzuki and Funaki. And I remember seeing them, and I was like, that's those kids. And I was like, okay, I'm a little tired, but that's all right, because I'd already gone for about 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so they come walking in. And so Sammy goes, hey, Suzuki, you want to go with them? Of course, it was hard to understand, right? And so I see him walk up, and Suzuki goes about 180 pounds. And I was like, I'm going to toss this kid around. So I get going, I'm throwing him around. And next thing I know, he's standing over me, and I'm like, what happened? I got choked, and I never, like I said, I didn't know what it felt like to be choked. So I'm looking around going, what happened? And he goes, yeah, it's all right, you get choked. And I was like, wow. So I go in some more, and I'm manhandling this guy, but every time I put him where I want him, he gets me in a leg lock or an arm or gets to choke, and I'm like, dang. So then comes Suzuki, he comes in Funaki after I roll with Suzuki for a while. Now they want me to go with Funaki, and I'm like, I ain't saying no. And so Funaki goes, he's about 205, about my height, 6'1", taller. I was like, okay, here we go. And I go at him hard again. Same thing, man. I never in my life as an adult been handled like that. So it was an eye opener for me. But what I'm saying is that now I went from wrestling into hybrid wrestling. I get the shot to fight. I win my first one, which is, it was predetermined, but in between that, I did well enough to be able to go against Funaki in my second one. And we went like 46 minutes with a 2 fall or a 2 submission. First one, they got the first 2. So it was a 2 out of 3 fall. Not pins, but submissions or a technical knockout, would win. And so we went like 46 minutes. I remember he got the first one, I got the second one, and then he got the third one. So he got the win. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I love this stuff. I was so locked in on this. And then I started doing well. Started traveling up the ranks. I was probably one of the tougher kids there. And I was rising up. But then it was like, man, I wanted more. Well, the company broke up. So then I went with Fujiwara Gumi because Sammy went there, and then Funaki and Suzuki went that way. So I followed them, and we got there, and then it felt like we were going backwards. Like we were having to put over guys that, were a little bit older, and they couldn't move as well. I remember a couple times I was asked not to punch and not to strike because I was in with some guys that couldn't take it, right? And they were older, and they were superstars over there. And it just felt, and I didn't mind it, but it just felt like I felt like the inside of me wanted to bust out. Like I want more. And so I remember Funaki and Suzuki came to me and said, hey, we're thinking about starting a new organization. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, we want it to be real. He says, you like that? Like, what do you mean real? He goes, like who wins. The guy really should wins. Like none of this, guy gets his hand raised. I was like, yes, I'm in. And that's how Pancrase was developed, we turned pro wrestling real because you had rope escapes and you had, kicks and punches and submissions. And so it was literally what wrestling looked like if you turned it real. And that was Pancrase. And I became the first champion there. I excelled at that. But it was like, I was on top of the world. This was the first mixed martial arts, and I was a champion. I was getting paid well, and everything was great. But when I saw this UFC thing, I was like, okay, I didn't believe it was real in the first place. But I thought to myself, what a concept. Like, think about that. Like, it's a street fight. Like, you come in and fight however you want to fight, and you come in and fight however you want to fight, and there are no rules, no time limit. I'm like, that's an interesting concept. but it ain't going to happen. It's like, this is back in 93.
Yeah, really.
So
yeah.
you're like, yeah, that's not happening. But I said, I'll do it. And I remember talking to Art Davies and telling him who I was. And I do the champion. I'm over in Japan. I'm the mixed martial arts champion. And of course, this is the kind of system that the Gracies were setting up, right? No one saw it before, but I was doing it over in Japan. Much different without a gi, right? So I never saw the gi thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, go to Japan 3 days before Denver, thinking to myself, it ain't going to happen. So I'm going to go to Japan, defend my title. I knocked Fouquet out with a knee. We jump on a plane. Fouquet comes with me after I knocked him out. He jumps on. It comes and works my corner along with the doctor from Japan, my dad. And we show up, but in our heads, we're like, they're going to come to us and going to say, okay, you can only punch to the body, something. But when we first saw the first fight, Gerard Godot and the sumo, he kicked him right in the face, brother. He hit him with the punch, kicked him in the face, and it was on. From that point on, in my body, inside my heart, I was like, oh, this is for real. And I was excited because I was like, I mean, you can't get more real than this.
No.
You can't. And I just thought to myself, I've gotten arrested for this stuff and got in trouble my whole life for doing this. And now they're going to pay me. I raised my hand. I'm in.
Yeah. And I love how, like you said, the early UFC, there was no rules, there was no groin kicking, no fish hooking.
Yeah, but you got fined. They didn't stop the fight, and if you did it and you couldn't continue, you won. So it didn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
Yeah, and then there was no weight limits. Like that first match you were speaking about, that weight limit was huge.
Yeah,
but that guy came right at him. Boom. Welcome to the UFC. And
like, hey, we opened the world up to everyone. Like, this is for, because if it had been me with Patrick Smith or Hoist with Art Jimerson, they would have crapped on. They would have been angry because they were like, what is this, pro wrestling? But because it was Gerard and it was a punch and a kick to the face, everybody understood that. So I think that was definitely a blessing that myself or Hoist didn't lead it off because people didn't understand that.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, like you said, you were skeptical. You're like, hey, it's probably just gonna be body shots, no hits to the face.
Yeah.
But as soon as you seen that first, punch and kick, you're like,
I was like, yes, okay, I'm in.
It's open season. Yeah. And you had a great early UFC career. I'm not saying that the later stuff was good, but I'm talking about you were unbeatable. You had some epic matches against Dan the Beast Severn. Tell us about going in the ring against or the octagon against him. Yeah,
Dan was. I mean, when you watched him, he was amazing, right? I mean, like he was taught. Anthony Macias, the poor kid. He got suplexed 7 times or something. He only weighed $150, and Dan just kept throwing him like it was a potato sack. And I was like, "Oh, somebody stop this!" And it really showed people the ability of what it was like to be in a fight, like literally not kickboxing or rule, but a fight. And what it looks like when you get 2 guys in there that can fight, it was so captivating. And what they were able to do was bring that to the forefront. And it showed people also too the reality of what people keep talking about when someone fights. Oh, you're going to kill them? Oh, somebody's going to get killed. You can't kill a human being that easy.
And man, if anybody could, when Dan was throwing that guy around, like. Dan's a friend of my fiance's family, and I talked him about early UFC a lot, and it's just like he said if he would have learned back then how to punch, he's like he thought it would have been a lot better for him.
He would have been unstoppable.
Because he had the wrestling down pat.
Yeah.
It's just he's like, I didn't know how to punch.
Yeah.
But coming, with you, we're going full speed ahead, guns a blazing, fist a flying.
Well, if you look when me and Dan did that fight, the first one, I mean, we hit a little bit, but we tied up, and I chose not to. I mean, I could have outstruck him easy. There's no question. I did Muay Thai over in Japan, so
yeah,
I could have leg kicking him. I could have been punching him, but I thought because of his ability of taking people down off of strikes and stuff like that, I just eliminate him. Let's just tie up and let's see who got the best grappling ability. And that was my whole concept going into that fight was don't try to strike him too much and get out of position because he's going to get you on the ground. He's going to get on. He's going to time you. He's going to take you down. And when he's on top of you, you ain't getting him off. So my whole concept was don't let him take you down because if he takes you down, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah. I actually was at one of his camps out in Michigan, and he was showing the people, like, if you distribute your weight evenly, you're done. You can't get him off and stuff. But,
Dan, like I said, Dan had, he tore through. I mean, he tore through the tournaments. He did 2 of them, Ultimate Open. I don't think anybody's done that, right? I mean, I think he did the full circle.
Yeah.
So he, like I said, for me to beat him, it said a whole lot about how good I was. And it was not to take anything away from him because he came back, even though it was, our game plans kind of sucked in the second one, but he was a formidable opponent. And if I hadn't got that choke, if he hadn't come back in on the second time and did it again, it would have been a much different fight. We would have battled all the way to the end.
Yeah, and so you're in the UFC early days, all of a sudden, who contacts you from WWE?
It was actually a decision I had to make because I wasn't, at that time, the UFC was struggling. They were in and out of court all the time because of these political agendas that people were having, and they want to get their name in TV, and the UFC was popular. So by them walking down and picketing and trying to shut it down, these politicians would get their faces on TV. So it was really difficult for UFC. Everywhere they went, Bob Meyer was in court trying, because they would accept it. We would get there, and then they would basically picket it. They would sign petitions, and then they would try to close it down. And so they were in court all the way up until the day of the fight, making sure that it didn't get shut down. One time it did get shut down, and we had to fly to Dothan, Alabama, in order to put the show on overnight. So they spent a lot of money in legal fees and fighting the system, and it put them in a bad spot. And so when it put them in a bad spot, I wasn't able to get the money I needed to support my family and the dojo that I had with the fighters. So I had to go and do something else because I didn't want to shut my gym down, and the fighters that were following their dreams, they wouldn't have been able. My brother, Jerry Bolander, Guy was in Dallas, but he wasn't a part of the team. And so we had a lot of fighters that were in the dojo that all were pretty good, and they wouldn't have been able to train. And so I sacrificed my time in order to keep that gym open so those guys could train and still follow their dream. And, also I got to support my family. My family comes first. And if I can't do what I love doing and support them, I have to do something else. So I went into pro wrestling. I had the opportunity to do that, but I looked all over. I was WCW, never heard back from them. In New Japan, did hear some stuff, but never bit. And I'm not sure if they would or wouldn't, but all I know is that we were putting feelers out, and I know people were interested. But the minute Vince, when contacted Vince and said, "Hey, Ken wants to do pro wrestling," Vince immediately brought me in, called me up, and said, "Hey, how'd you like to come down to Connecticut?" Oh yeah. Was on Monday night, I think Monday Night Raw, when I kind of faced off with Farouk the first time I was seen on there. Mm-hmm. Vince didn't let one day go by once he knew I wanted to be in pro wrestling. He saw an opportunity to be able to take me and bring in this tough attitude, personality, and character. And I think, because of my character, because of my personality, because of where I came from with that no holds barred, bare knuckle fighting mentality, and I was a world champion, coming in there changed the dynamic of what people were watching in pro wrestling. It was like, whoa, where'd this guy come from? And then they start researching and they find out where I come from. And then you got Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, and all these attitudes started to change. All these attitudes started to add into WWF. Vince started creating this world of the Attitude Era. Vince created that through bringing me into the WWF. And that's why they call it the Attitude Era. And I thought it was genius. I mean, you've seen it just trickle through the whole wrestling room into the fans. It just spilled over. And I'm listen, just my opinion, nobody fry me over this, but my opinion is I think that was one of the best generations of all time, Attitude Era.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. That was when wrestling was the hottest that I have ever seen. And we have a question from Liam Savage. I'll put it up on the screen here. It actually is about your debut. When you debuted on Raw, did you think it was kind of overshadowed by the ECW invasion, and was you okay with it?
Yeah, I thought ECW was different. Excited. I thought those dudes were crazy. Probably something I would have done. Run through barbed wire, get lit up on fire, jump through a table 20 feet up. It was exciting, and I thought those guys brought a different element to wrestling. But I think you got to be honest with yourself. Nothing was going to overshadow the Attitude Era.
Yeah. Well, I think the question he was trying to get was, your debut the same night as they did the invasion on Raw.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. No, it didn't matter because I think it was an introduction. When I did my match with Vader, everybody was watching. So, that was my introduction. Me being out there standing in the audience was no big deal.
Yeah. But, you mentioned Vader in there, and Vader's been known to, lay him in there pretty good.
Yes.
What was your, first match like with Vader, going in there? Because I'm sure, if you laid him in there, you were going to lay him right back in there.
Well, let's just say this. Me and Vader had an understanding that he was going to allow me to be me, and I was going to allow him to be him. And we went out and had a hell of a match. That I can tell you. And it was over, and he gave me a hug and said, "Good job, brother. Did good." And I was green, right? Even though I wrestled a little bit before, this was a whole different world because I've been out of it for a few years. Mm-hmm. Well, for coming back to it and having that first match with Vader, man, that was a blessing. Because if I'd have been with anybody else, I'd have never wrestled again. So Vader was a tough dude. So I even broke his nose. Like it was an accident. He was coming down. I was throwing a knee up, and I didn't tell him, right? I mean, because I was sparring with him basically. Yeah. And he was sparring with me, and he hit me with a hard shot one time, and I hit him with the knee, and we busted each other up. And then afterwards, we were like, "Hey, that was a great match, dude." But at that time, I also got pulled aside by Bret, and then he said, "Dude, I was really good. The people bought that. It was a great start." He said, "But you can't work with everybody like that." And I said, "Okay, I get it," because I wrestled before, but it was great to get my feet wet and not have to worry about if I was going to hurt somebody.
Yeah, and Vader being your first, dance partner, to get back into things, that was picture perfect.
Yeah.
So speaking of Bret, you were in there on what most people say might have been one of the top 5 best WrestleMania matches of all time. Bret and Stone Cold in that I Quit match. And you seen that dance firsthand. What was your opinion of the match overall? And, having them put you in there with your background, like you're the authority in this match.
Well, it's exactly, I think, what Vince was trying to do. He wanted his wrestlers to be believable. And by me being in there and reffing that match made Stone Cold and Steve Austin badasses. And they already were, right? But when you put me in the mix, now it elevates them like, okay, these guys are legitimate tough guys, but they're not getting the recognition they deserve. You put me in there now, refereeing that match, and now they're looking at him differently. Like, ooh, these guys can really fight. And so I was worried about doing the match because I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't know if I can fake this stuff. I don't know if I can act like, oh, hey, you okay, dude? Oh, yep. And so I had no clue about how I was going to do this. And the match gets started, man, and I mean, you couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. They weren't beating the hell out of each other. I mean, I thought they were beating the hell out of each other. It was like me and Vader's match. I was like, these guys are okay. I can do this.
And the finish, is etched into everybody's minds. It's still shown on Monday Night Raw. What did you think about the finish? And can you give us a little insight of who's the one that came up with that finish?
Yeah, you got to explain to me the finish because it was a minute long.
The one where Stone Cold, he didn't quit. He passed out with the blood loss and everything. Yeah,
and then there was a suplex after that. So like I said, there was a string of things that happened there that really set the tone for Stone Cold's turn, Brett's turn, my rise. There was a lot going on there. And in my opinion, it changed the face of wrestling. That match changed the face of wrestling. It began the Attitude Era with Stone Cold and Bret Hart, and then it just trickled down to everyone else. With me being in that match, it gave it legitimacy. Like, and then when those guys put the match on that they did, shit, there was no going back from that. I mean, the crowd went nuts. And again, people could not tell the difference of whether or not they were doing it for real or not doing it for real. They went after each other, and they made a point to make sure that it did not look fake, because I was in there with them, and there was no way those guys wanted anybody to think that they weren't doing it for real.
Yeah, and so you had the World's Most Dangerous Man moniker, which is at one point in time, and possibly still now, as true can be. Was that something that you pitched to Vince, or did Vince sit there and say, hey, this is what we're going to call you?
Yeah, I came in with my name. I was known as Ken the Rock Shamrock early on in the UFC, and then there was this special that went on after I was the champion, and they were basically finding the world's most dangerous animals, the food, places. There's a lot of these things that they were finding out that were dangerous, and the world's most dangerous person or man. And so they were going through all these different people. And I know when they asked me about it, they said, hey, we've been researching and trying to find out who we think, because at that time I was the champion in the United States with the UFC, and I was also the champion in Japan. And so they were looking for this, who's the most dangerous man in the world. And through all the boxing, through everything that they saw, I was it. They chose me. And so they did the special. And I remember thinking at the time in the UFC, where it was very controversial, like people didn't like what we were doing. They were saying we were animals, we were going to kill somebody. And I remember thinking to myself, and we didn't get good press. And I'm thinking to myself, they're going to burn me. I got kids, and they want to come to my house. They want to go to my gym. And I'm like, I don't want them to focus on me. And I remember asking questions, said, no, trust me. We want to put a face. We want to put a character, and we want a personality to who you guys are, so people can relate to you. And I was like, sounds like a pitch, but I said, okay. And so when we shot it, and they shot the first scene with my kid with boxing head gloves on, and we were sparring with each other, and he was only 10 years old. And he jumped on me, wrestle, and they were shooting that. And I remember seeing the finished product, and I was like, okay, this is good. Because what it did was it showed everybody that we were no different than anybody else. We had kids, we had a wife, we had bills, we ate the same, we had things. We had a different job. And so we loved, we cried. I mean, we were just as human as everybody else. But that's what it needed to be, so people could go, dang, they're not bad. It's kind of like the boogeyman. You never seen him, but you think he's bad. You never met him. Yeah. So I think it really did help really give people a face and a character, and to be able to see it and go, it ain't bad.
You're just trying to pay the bills and take care of your family. That's
Right.
all you're trying to do.
I just do it differently.
Yeah. So when does, you have a feud coming up with The Rock for the Intercontinental title strap? How did it feel when Vince said, "Hey, we're putting the title on you," and you're going up against a young Rock who's just coming into this prime right then?
Yeah, we were both working off one another. I thought we both really helped each other really get to the pinnacle in our careers. I know he was with the Nation. He was just being overlooked. But, man, once you gave him the mic, man, that dude shined. And it was an honor for me to be working with him, helping him grow his career as he helped me grow mine. But we had some tremendous matches. I remember taking a chair shot, and he was just like, "I ain't hitting your face." I said, "If you don't, I ain't selling it." He said, "Okay, I'll hit you in the face." And he hit me.
Oh, man. So, when they finally put the title on you, well, what are your thoughts? Are you thinking, man, they believe me? They're getting ready. They want to take me to the next level. What's going through your head?
Yeah, it's always exciting to be able to get the strap, right? I mean, you're like, yeah. But in my head, I was like, like I've done everywhere. It was almost like just it wouldn't be satisfied unless I was able to reach the top, get the world championship, because everything I've ever done, I've captured that, and I've been able to get there. And so winning that strap was that was the first part of the journey. The tag team, the Intercontinental, King of the Ring, Rookie of the Year, all these things. I accomplished everything, man. But yet I never got a chance to get the championship belt. And it was frustrating to me, because I felt like I had so many guys I could have worked with, built programs with, been able to have title runs with. And it just felt like they just didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah, and it's kind of disappointing that, your rookie year, they strapped a rocket to your ass and took you to the moon. And all of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, you hit that glass ceiling. We're just going to use you to put over other talent." And it's like, wait a minute here, You put so much time, invested so much money into me, and I'm just being me. Why not go that extra mile?
Yeah, I'm sure they had a reason. I know they didn't bring me in and pay me because they were going to bury me. I don't think that was it. I just think that maybe it was because they didn't have an idea of where or what to do with me, or there was so much talent there. I mean, You look at it, there was a lot of talent, right? So maybe it was just waiting my time. Unfortunately, I couldn't sit around forever because I still had the itch to fight. So I felt like I'd been there long enough. I didn't want to keep going in the direction that they were going with me. So I had to make an opportunity to step away and go do what I was itching to do.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like, I can't remember if did Dan come in before you?
No, Dan came in after I was there. And then he was there for we did one match. Then we did a dungeon where he's the referee, and I was in the Lions Den cage.
Yeah.
Seemed like they were teasing it, but just like all the other ones except for The Rock, just like all the other ones, they just fizzled out.
Yeah, because, you and Dan in WWE were complete opposites. Dan was quiet, calm base, and you were, dynamite, explosive, showed a lot of emotion. And I think that's what really helped get you over, like, the unpredictability of, damn, what's Ken going to do next?
Is he going to snap? Yeah. Yeah, so, it was a fun run, and I enjoyed it. Even short time I was there, it was great. But you think about before Ken Shamrock and after Ken Shamrock, I changed pro wrestling. I mean, they didn't have tap outs. I mean, they had I give up, verbal tap out, but tap out, no, I brought that.
Yeah, and my this is just my opinion. People might roast me. There's only ever been 3 pure natural athletes that ever went through WWE. You, Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you 3 there, the accolades that you guys all have accomplished, like you picked up wrestling really, really quick. You know, Kurt picked it up really quick. Brock did the exact same thing. And for you to be able to turn on and off your fighter mentality is bar none, you know, amazing.
Yeah, it was fun to be able to work with Vader first, right? Because it gave me an opportunity to go in and feel what I should be doing. And not, especially in my first match in big crowds, jittery, you're excited, and be able to know that you can go in and make a mistake and the guy's going to be okay. But I did pick it up fast after that. I was able to control everything. I was able to still be intense, and everything I did looked snug and looked like real. So, because I didn't want to be that guy that wanted people to sell something that didn't hit them. So I'd always tell them, like, listen, hit me, because if you don't, I'm not selling it. And so they didn't. It was all music to their ears, because they didn't have to throw a work punch and hope it landed. I said, no, hit me with it. I'm okay. I'll be okay.
So you didn't like the direction you were going. You had that itch again. So did you contact the UFC, or did UFC contact you back?
Yeah, no, I was actually doing Pride, and then I got out of there, and then I went down to the UFC. They invited me down there, and Dana White approached me and asked if I wanted to fight Tito. And I just finished up my deal over in Pride, and I was going to get knee surgery because I had some issues with the knees and stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, sure, I can do it. I got knee surgery coming up, which I think was a month before. And he looked at me and said, oh, man, we've got this fight coming up in 2 months, 3 months. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'll be ready. And he goes, dang. He goes, man, we really need you. And I was like, well, I mean, I've been fighting on this thing for a year. I can wait another fight. It was stupid, right? Okay, I'm going to fight Tito, one of the best fighters in the world. I don't need my knees. So I went in and took the fight, and the rest was history. But I don't care what anybody says, man. Me and Tito, we lit that place up. The rival we had was second to none. We woke everybody up.
Yeah, and so what was your thoughts on first time being in UFC? No structure, no nothing. Now all of a sudden Dana White's got this in his pocket, and he's getting ready to make this a super conglomerate right there.
Yeah, man, it was like they weren't doing shit though, man. I mean, like when I got there, they were dying. They were getting ready to close the doors. I mean, rumor was that if they didn't turn it around, they were done. They were doing like under 30,000 buys when Tito was beating everybody. Tito didn't have anybody he could play off of. Like, there's nobody. And here he was. He had all this character, all this personality. He was a great champion. He was pound for pound one of the best 205-pounder fighters ever, I think. And I'm just thinking to myself, this guy was beating everybody, but you couldn't get anybody to come watch him because he didn't have an adversary. And so when I came around and they actually offered the fight, I was like, dude, I was drooling, because I was like, man, I could get into this. And we did. We got into it, man. We just blew it up. But to see where it was at, it broke me, because I was there in the beginning, and I didn't want to see this thing fail, because my legacy was part of that.
Correct.
And so I went ahead and did it, even though I knew that I probably shouldn't have. But to me, I wanted to fight. Somebody dangles a carrot in front of me, I'm going to take it. And that's just me when I talk about when I broke my neck. That's the person I am. And people need to understand that. I could have my my hand could be cut off, and I'll find a way to beat you, or at least I'll try. And that's just the character, right? So when they dangled that in front of me with Tito, I was like, I'm there. Let's do it. And we started doing it, man. We got into each other's face. And, yeah, people say, man, that it was real, and it was real. But I think people have to understand, and I keep telling them, and for whatever reason, they don't want to believe me, but it wasn't personal. It never was personal. I wanted to make it personal because I felt like it got me into the mood of being able to fight. I've always been that way. Even beginning of my career, you got me in that, you weren't going to stop me. Later on in my career with the injury and stuff, obviously I wasn't the same fighter, and I hear people, just get him mad, he'll get up. 20 years, do that to me and see what you think.
and I can't remember correctly, but weren't you part of the Ultimate Fighter TV series too, the coaches?
Yeah, I was one of them. We actually broke all records. I mean, it was tremendous. And that was the lead up too. Like I said, me and Tito did a lot for the UFC to be able to blow open doors. And don't get me wrong, Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner did a tremendous job. But I want you to tell me, before those two dudes fought, do you think people bought that or went to see that because they wanted to see Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin?
No.
I mean, like, come on, people. That place blew up because me and Tito, we did that before the show ever started. Yes, when those guys fought, they became superstars, and give them credit because they helped build the UFC. But don't think for a minute that they were the ones that kickstarted it.
No, and I remember watching that, live, and I watched it because I wanted to see if the old Lion still had that, left in the tank to take out.
He still had a roar.
Yeah, to take out that young up and comer Tito Ortiz, who was taking care of everybody.
Yeah, he again. I thought he was one of the best 205 pounders ever. I think there's a lot of good ones, but he's up there with them.
Yeah, and in my opinion, like that era of Ultimate Fighting UFC, if you want to talk feuds, it has to be you and Tito, and then Chuck Liddell and Rampage. Like they're the only two that I can sit there and say I'm buying that because of those matches.
Right.
Those fights. But hey, Ken, I appreciate you coming, sitting down and talking with us. I got one last question, and it's one of my favorites. It's a hot tub time machine.
Oh,
okay. You can go back. I'm gonna switch it up for you. You can go back in time to any UFC fight or wrestling match. Take somebody out and put yourself in that fight or match. Who would it be and why?
Oh boy, I got a lot of them to choose through. I would probably say that I would say WrestleMania 13. Take out Stone Cold, put me in.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That
Bret
would
Hart, me. And I've always said that if they should have used me and Bret Hart, the moves and stuff that we could have done on the mat, the string of holds that we could have done, chain wrestling, the stuff we could have done. Man, we missed it. We missed it. We missed a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and man, you guys could have did a whole summer series. You guys could have built it up for a whole year's worth of matches, and
yeah,
you never would have got sick because you guys would have just brought something new each time and brought the intensity up each level.
It would have been so much different than what everybody else was doing in the wrestling ring, because a lot of you got ropes and off and this, and me and him would have went through so many chain wrestling moves and slams and different counters. It would have been beautiful. It would have been beautiful.
Yeah. So, Ken, I want to thank you for stopping by. We want to tell everybody where to get your merchandise. Where can they hit you up if they have any questions? Upcoming stuff. I know that you're getting pretty busy here soon with your own MMA. So let them know. Yeah, and we're doing a show here pretty soon in January. We will make an announcement in the next couple weeks. It's called ValorBK.com if you want to go check out our website.
If you're a fighter and you want to fight for us, go there, fill out the form. If you want to get tickets to that fight, you can also go there. Once we make the announcement, we'll let you know where you can buy the tickets at. It's valorbk.com. If you want to follow me personally, kenshamrock.com. I have all of my social media sites on there. You can hit me up there. And if you want to purchase a shirt, the Lions Den shirt, a Valor shirt, you want to purchase cups, mugs, you name it, you go to my shopping cart on kenshamrock.com. I appreciate all you guys having me on, man. Thank you.
Hey, Ken, I appreciate you taking out some time and talk to us. This has probably been one of my most excited interviews I've ever had, because I followed your career from way back in '93 in the UFC, all the way until now. And I must say, you are still probably the world's most dangerous man, and you're very intense. And I found out you have a big heart, and don't tell you ever no, you can't do something. You prove everybody wrong.
Yes, that is true.
So, Ken, thanks for stopping by, and we'll sit there and talk to you. Is there any way we could ever get you to come back for a part 2? Because we have left so many holes ever in your career that we could sit there and talk probably for another 2 hours.
Yeah, you know what, man? When we make the announcement in the next couple of weeks, man, we can circle back around in about 6 weeks, and we can do something on the Valor Show and talk some more wrestling.
Hey, Ken, I appreciate the offer and the opportunity. I'll definitely take you up on that.
Right on. So,
hey, Ken, this is Ken Shamrock, not the 2-time, the 3-time Hall of Famer.
Right.
Say thanks a lot, Ken.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you. God bless.
Yep, God bless.
All right.
Wow, man. There you go. Ken Shamrock, world's most dangerous man, 3-time Hall of Famer. Man, that was a great interview. And right now, I will bring in my esteemed colleague. He is Mike Freeland.
Wow. I tell you what, that was possibly the best interview I've ever got a chance to listen to. Ken is a consummate professional, and the way he articulates himself and the way he describes, not only his life experiences within wrestling, but in UFC, but the passion he speaks with as well is, he paints that picture. He paints a beautiful picture. And I think that's what has made him so captivating for so many years in so many different areas. I mean, wherever he goes, it works. And Ritt, you knocked it out of the ballpark. I tell you what, dude, I mean, you hit on so many great things. I could not be more proud of you, my friend.
And I appreciate it, Freeland. Man, there's just so much. I'm glad Ken's going to give us a second round. There is so much more we can sit and talk about with Ken. And, man, to be invited on his show, that's a privilege and an honor, Freeland.
I tell you what, man, it's a true testament of not only who he is as a person, but the way you carried everything tonight, dude. I mean, I saw it. I watched it from where I was. And like I said before, I'm proud of you. You have done an amazing job. You are just as much the lifeblood of this as I am. And I mean that with complete sincerity.
Freeland, that means a lot to me. I might bust your balls, over and over again, but man, without you, there would be no me, and without both of us, there would be no future stars now.
This is true. This is absolutely true. It's so interesting when we get these guests that come on here, because you can eat it, Liam Savage. You really can. Look at this guy. Can we kick him out?
Jealous.
He is jealous. Look at that. Yeah, I did miss it. I missed it completely. School board meeting went crazy. You can probably figure out what the topic was. I kind of got caught up in it. And Meet the Teacher Night didn't really turn into Meet the Teacher Night. It turned into something more. But you know what? It was my very first Meet the Teacher Night, and it did. Wow. But you know what? Most important thing is that the Ritt gave the audience everything and more. The questions were great. The interactions were great. The follow-up was great. And that's what it's all about. It's about giving the audience what they deserve. And you went above and beyond that, my friend.
Thank you, Freeland. So next up, we have next Tuesday, 8 o'clock, we have my personal favorite, Encore, one of Mikey's grandkids, trained by the great amazing Red. That's at the 8 o'clock hour.
Yes.
9 o'clock hour, we've got Mr. Ren Jones. He's going to stop by, talk wrestling. And then, of course, 10 o'clock, we've got the panel. What's going to happen on next week's panel? You never know. But you got to tune in to find out.
You got to tune in. Yes. I'm going to mix it up. You may see some different things next week on the panel. You may not. Some faces may be there, some faces maybe not. But that's the important thing, is that we continue to deliver a product that we believe that you are going to deserve. I will say this in closing before we go. The concept of Future Stars Now, which is Ritt birthed that. I think that it is really awesome because so many names and so many faces are getting exposure to not only our audience, but a larger audience as well. We are getting people on here to tell their stories. People will look back at this and they say the Conrad model. Well, they'll be saying it's the Ritt model, because this right here is going to go to the stratosphere and back. The indies are hot. They've always been hot. They were hot before the pandemic. They're coming back. They're hot again. And we are lining up the greatest people right now for you to listen to. So I think this Tuesday night's going to be what they call a banger. I don't know why I can't say that and not like giggle like a kid, but it's going to be a banger. I guess that means really good.
But anyways, head on over to twitch.tv/FRM pod and do what, Freeland?
Hit that follow button.
Hit it? No,
well,
you don't hit that button. You don't hit that button, Freeland. What do you do to that button?
You smash that button. Smash it. Smash it. And also, if you would be so gracious and open up your wallet, we understand times are tough right now, but if you'd hit that subscribe button as well, trust me, you're helping the Ritster, you're helping myself be able to continue to produce this great content, because it's because of you that we're able to do these things. But nothing's for free, and we got to pay our own bills as well. But also, we have a great YouTube channel as well. So you can catch all these great exclusive interviews. All you got to do is go on over to our Twitch channel and please hit the follow, hit the like button, hit the subscribe so you get all notifications anytime a new FRM or FSN interview is available. You can catch them and enjoy the content as we continue to produce it.
And this Ken Shamrock video will be uploaded Monday by a great technician that takes care of all our YouTube video greats. So just want to throw out a little shout out to him.
Little shout out to the man in the north. It's got a lot of boxes. A lot of boxes. Not really sure if he's a recycler or not, but I'm not sure.
But man, just to let you guys know, I am the Ritt.
I am Mike Freeland. Habitually late and sometimes not even there at all.
Thank you for stopping by. Special edition of Front Row Material. Tune in Tuesday. See you then.